It is time to create a 3D game. Yes, the idea of such a horror game actually came to me in a dream once after I spent a lot of time playing a game called Voices of the Void.
I don't like this.
This game and Iron Lung inspired me to make something similar in terms of horror, but with different mechanics, setting, and story. I don't want to describe these games in detail, but I will say that they are horror games that don't scare you with screamers.
$2.95 confirmed beautifully.
Well, almost.
Okay, here we go. Ooh, we did it. Okay. Oh.
Okay, they scare with screamers too. That morning when I woke up, I immediately put the new idea on my Albert Einstein list of mega brilliant ideas, realizing that it would be a while before I started developing it. A lot of time has passed since that day, and it seems like it's time to implement it somehow to see if it's worth it. To begin with, first of all, it should be a horror game, because no one is interested in playing a regular spaceship flight simulator. Besides, it's vital for an indie developer to have a horror game on their itch.io page. But again, I don't plan to add screamers in the usual sense. Scaring the player will be something else entirely. In my opinion, much more scary. But first, a general description. The idea is that the player will have his own spaceship. The player's task will be to monitor their ship and fulfill the assigned tasks. In this way, the player will receive a certain currency for which he can improve his ship, buy additional equipment or even a new ship. Between missions, the player will return to a certain station, which will act as a kind of hub where they can refuel, get the next mission, or buy some stuff. Of course, this gameplay cycle can change a lot in the future. Now imagine this. During the delivery of some piece of hardened diarrhea, the ship's power goes out. You hear someone breathing outside the door. You reach the room to restart the generator and see an unknown creature approaching you. At that moment you turn on the light, and, as if nothing had happened, what was it? A hallucination? You are in the confined space of your ship and there is no way out. All that remains is to complete the task. I've already come up with a lot of such situations. In my opinion, if the above is successfully implemented, it will turn out to be a pretty good pants-shooting simulator. Now that you know the basic idea of the game, let's talk about the implementation. To begin with, I create a new 3D Unity project and immediately close it, because I want to create a basic set of models so that I don't have to work with cubes and spheres or capsules, but immediately have an idea of what the game will look like. As you can see from the previous videos, I have no idea how to create 3D models at all, but I've heard of some tools. I rejected Blender right away. The first reason I did that was that I'm a total idiot. That's all the reasons. Then I remembered a modeling tool that was originally created for Minecraft. I'm talking about Blockbench. It takes up almost no space, installs in a few seconds, and has a super simple interface for primates like me. Anyone can figure it out in one evening. This program seems to be perfect for me in this case, and this is not an advertisement. They didn't have enough money to buy an ad from me. So, despite its simplicity, it still took me a long time to understand what UV is, how to apply a texture correctly, how to create a model without adding 1,000 extra vertices or faces. You also need to understand what hotkeys are for all this, and so on. As a result, I have a good starter kit from which I can create a basic environment. By the way, many thanks to my friend for helping me create some of the models. Now I'm logging into Unity, and now I need to figure out how to import the models correctly. You see, some of my models have textures that need to be rendered on both sides. I also need to take into account light and collisions. To do this, you need to properly configure the materials, and if necessary, make a custom shader. It wasn't the easiest task for me, but I managed it, I guess. The scene still looks terrible, but at least all the objects are not pure pink. Now the player. Here I didn't reinvent the wheel, I added a capsule, added a camera, a player controller, and my own script. And it's done. Now I can run and even jump on my pile of garbage. Now I want to change the sky to make it look like space. Get out of here, you stupid panel, and the outer space feeling is ready. My ship turned out to be quite small. I intended it that way, because it's supposed to be a starter ship. Actually, I wanted to make it a bit bigger, but I left it as it is. In any case, I want to add another station, so that I have a place where I can run around. And of course, I need to add some kind of stupid secret. I'll have to remove this bullshit. And now, as you can see, the player has a little more room to walk. And here comes my favorite part. Since in my mind it should be a high-tech ship with lots of switches, buttons, and levers, I need to write down the basic logic of interaction with the world around me. And then, based on that, I have to create different types of interfaces. I spent about 2 days writing scripts without ever entering the game. So everything that player can interact with is inherited from the interactable class. Let's say that all the interactions work. Now we need them to do something. After thousands of tests and bug fixes, all interactions now work as they should. It was fun to run around the created level and click all the buttons. The only thing missing was the sound, but I'll get back to that later. Still, I get bored running around empty rooms. I was developing these mechanics at 1 a.m., so I went to bed and realized the next morning that I'd set my development priorities wrong, and instead of some important mechanics, I added running, approaching, and shaking camera animations. After that, I shut down the entire station and locked the ship's main enter door. The reason for this was that I was starting to feel well-known feature creep and realized that I would be developing this game for several more months with such attempts. I didn't need that. Now I'm relieved, because now I have to develop much fewer mechanics, especially only those that reflect most of the gameplay. I'm talking about managing and maintaining the ship and the scary events associated with it. Let's return to optimizing and limitations of the Unity itself. As it turned out, one object can be illuminated by only 4 light sources. This value can be increased to 8, I think, but it definitely won't be a relief for game stability. And at that moment, another problem appears. My ship has to move. My brain was melting at the time I was trying to find a solution to all of that. In addition, when traveling to large enough coordinates, the view of the game objects will break. Let me remind you that this is space, and there should be quite large distances, and I have to optimize all of this by any means possible and make it look natural. It sounds like an extra week of development. It actually is. If I hadn't come up with a fairly simple solution to these problems, I will check whether the player has opened the door, entered the room, and whether he entered the room with the door closed, or he opened the door and went in the other direction, or he opened the door and did not enter the room, then closed it, or maybe he decided to stand between the doors and crush himself, or press the button on one side. In short, I needed to check which room the player is in and whether the door is closed. So I turn off the light in the room where the player is not present and where the door is closed. I also found out that the same interfaces that are placed on objects also cause additional load, so I will also turn them off. Now for the movement. Here I will also create the illusion that the ship is moving. In fact, it is in place and does not even turn. How did I do that? You can see it yourself. It's quite simple. Particles, screen shaking, rotation of the skybox, engines, and coordinate changes. I also move the whole world in the opposite direction, and turn off the relevant objects if they are too far away and turn them on if they come back into the view. Since I don't have a station anymore, this isn't really important at the moment, but it will serve as a base for future updates. By the way, you could notice the sound of the running engines. In general, it wasn't that difficult task, but I finally added the audio. Obviously, the sounds and music weren't made by me, so I'll have to change them to my own in future, I guess. Anyway, for now, I can only express my respect to the authors of these audios. They are really cool. I spent all day on this, picking up nice sounds of walking, various clicks, noise, and most importantly, ambient. I am quite satisfied with the result. I hope I haven't bored you with my stories about the mechanics yet, because the last part of the gameplay is still to come. In fact, there is nothing in the ship except for doors and controls. To fix this, I plan to add a system for controlling oxygen, temperature, fuel level, thrust, battery charge, and power. I spent some time on this, and now the player need to monitor the oxygen and temperature levels. Why do you need to do this? Simply to not die. You also have a certain amount of fuel and electricity. A little bit of energy is generated by itself, but if you run out of fuel, it's basically game over for now. Will there be an end? Yes, it will, but we need to add something else first. You haven't forgotten why am I creating all of this, have you? This is the moment of truth. It's time to actually add some spooky things. Since I don't have much time, I'll quickly add an event system and connect their random generation. Let's test what I've done. And as you can see, it turned out pretty well in my opinion, a rather depressing atmosphere of hopelessness and isolation. This is exactly the effect I wanted to achieve, and that's where the idea for the game's title came from. Isolated in Hell, which sounds similar to Isolated in Hell. It's really cool, but it doesn't make sense because the player doesn't have any reason to be here. That's why I had to add a small tutorial in order to make the player achieve some first goals, and that way teach him all the core mechanics. After it, main tasks are appeared. You have 3 randomly generated points that you need to reach to complete the game, or rather the demo. I know it's pretty stupid and doesn't make any sense, but I'm not going to think about a lore, story, or anything like that for now. I'll leave it for later. For now, the most important thing is to finalize some gameplay to show you. So your task is to fly to the given coordinates and survive, while experiencing random events that happen on your ship. Those events become more and more dangerous the further player goes, despite it is already scary as fuck in some moments. in my opinion, there is a lack of gameplay depth here. That's why I'm adding a reason why some of these events will happen. Now you can see I am adding hiding places. I think you understand that now you will have someone to hide from on your ship, but I won't spoil who it is. Download the game and see for yourself. In conclusion, I made a game that definitely keeps you on your toes, so much so that my friends of whom I let play it didn't even want to continue the game at first because it was too scary, and I think I now understand why. The main reason for this is the fear of the unknown. At any moment you can hear a breath behind you, your door can be broken into, and you don't know what to expect from this. This is what scares a player. I will take this as a basis in the future.